Alright people, review of the week time, and boy do we have a lot to talk about. We have a lot to talk about, a lot to preview, but also got a lot to review. Let's start with the DAZN card that happened last night. That was pretty much the only major boxing event that was this weekend. Obviously we have Latino night coming up this weekend, and I was told something very interesting about that, and I'm probably not able to share it with you. Just I wouldn't say that it's not a major fight or anything like that, but once I get full confirmation, I will be telling you in a video. It's not a fight, but I think it's a nice little caveat for this card, and I will try and do a live watch along this coming Saturday first, because it's not a pay-per-view event, but I think CBS versus Zurdo Ramirez is a good main event. I think it's a good main event. It's a solid card. It's not pay-per-view, obviously, thank God. It's a solid Saturday fight night. My only hope is that it just doesn't go on, as I always seem to say, really late into the night. Hopefully not. And obviously there is, I'll talk about the other one now in a wee bit. But let's just talk about the fights that were on last night. Now, I haven't got a chance to see in all of them. I really want to see this Bakole fight. He fought a guy called Manuel Galesso. Now, I can't comment on it because he lost in the 9th round. He was TKO'd in the 9th round. I haven't had a chance to watch the fight yet. Now, I did see it come up on my DAZN feeds, and it was saying, incredible upset. I don't say incredible necessarily, but I'm curious to see it. But Ammo Williams made a return, as did Raymond Ford. Apparently, Raymond Ford, I think I remember saying, is the mandatory, he's not the mandatory, but he could be in a position to fight for the vacant IBF title, because apparently Kakache is looking to potentially vacate and move up. So we'll keep an eye on that. Jesse Bam Rodriguez fought a guy called Pedro Gorava, I think it's how you say his name. Now, this was a former world champion, not been stopped. He's lost 5 times now. Now he has been stopped, but prior to that he hadn't lost. He lost a split decision last year to Quadras. Apparently he was down in that fight. Wins against Andrew Maloney. He lost to Ken Shearer, majority decision, back in 2017. But he lost to, I was watching the DAZN feed, in 2012, split decision to John Real Casimero. He was down in that fight. The DAZN broadcaster, I think it was Todd Grisham, was saying he was considering retirement after that fight. But he didn't retire, and he ended up becoming a world champion 2 years later, WBC 108 pound. I hope I didn't say Superfly, no, light fly 108 pound champion. So, although Jesse Bam Rodriguez started at 108 pounds, he's 24 years old, and he's going through the weights very quickly. He went from 108 to 115 back to fly, which you would have thought would have been a nice kind of in between, where he was apparent like he could make the weight, but he was struggling to even make 112. So God knows how he was ever able to get down to 108. But he now looks a lot comfier at 115 pounds, and he was hitting hard. It was a good little scrap. Bam walked him onto a left hand, dropped him with a left hand, and then it was a brilliant kind of walking in uppercut. It's very difficult to see because of the angle that they were on, but Bam Rodriguez, big right uppercut. This guy, mouthpiece was out as soon as he hit the day. He knew. So great performance by Bam Rodriguez. Yes, 35 years old. Again, just Bam Rodriguez is 24 years old. But Bam, on this card, he was the performer of the night, so to speak. I know UFC tend to do that, performance of the night. I would be giving it, just from what I've seen so far, to Bam Rodriguez. Always tremendous talent to watch. As I said, Eddie Hearn, when he signed him, I think he really did find one of boxing's next big stars. And as I said, he's only at 115 pounds. I expect him to go through the weights. I think that Naoya Inoue started at 108 as well. You may remember that. And I think he would have been a similar age. Actually, probably would have been a similar age to Bam. Now he's at 122, he's undisputed, and potentially next year could be moving up to 126. I would imagine Bam, different frame, like Inoue, I think with that frame, I genuinely think maybe 126 is his limit. I'm even thinking 122 could be Inoue's limit, really. Because he doesn't look small, but he doesn't look massive either at 122. I think Bam might be able to go a little bit further in terms of just weight-wise. But there's no rush, and I really like what I'm seeing with Bam. I've said that before. I think that every single fight, he just shows me something else. I think he's a tremendous talent. I really do, and I've said it before, and I think Eddie Hearn needs to cling on to Jesse Bam Rodriguez for dear life, because he is one of the next big stars in America. I think he's already getting there, but he's definitely going to be one of the next big stars. Another fighter who has definitely potential to become a big star. Last night was last night was not one of his better performances, was Boots Ennis. Now, when he fought Karen, I know people, the Karen names are coming straight up, but when he fought this guy last year, I think it was November time, round about then. When was it actually last time he fought him? It wasn't even November. I thought it was November. I thought it was later than that. It's nearly 2 years since he fought Boots. It was January 21 was when he fought him. So when he fought Boots Ennis, fought a very negative fight. It was an awful fight. Horrible. And went the distance, went 12 rounds. That's pretty much the fight in a nutshell. I mean, I pretty much reviewed the first fight. Went the distance, went 12 rounds. But in that fight, Boots was getting hit a little bit, you know, whenever he did let the occasional right hand go. But there was nothing. Yes, you did worry because you weren't worried about Boots getting knocked down or anything like that, but you were like, well, he's not really adjusting to the shots that are coming back when he does throw. In this fight, it was very, very different. It was very, very different. And I thought that Boots, although he won the fight, he won it comfortably. Although saying that, you know, I think the 116-110 scorecard was about accurate. I think that was about accurate. And if you take the knockdown and the point deduction out of the equation, it becomes an 8-4 type of fight, which to me is competitive. That's a competitive fight. It's a clear win for Boots Ennis, but it's competitive enough that, you know, you're giving some rounds away. So, you know, I think that is a much improved performance. And from what I was seeing in there, yeah, I thought that he was punching with Boots Ennis. Boots Ennis' defense, which has never been his strongest. It's never been something that you'd looked at Boots Ennis and thought the defense is on point. It's more the offense, which again is brilliant. But the fact that Boots Ennis is so good offensively, but you're still able to punch with him, that's a worry. And a lot of fighters will look at that and think, well, hang on a minute, I'm better than this guy. I can punch with Boots Ennis. I hit harder than this guy. This is going to be, that might be something that a lot of fighters are going to look at and exploit now, knowing that when you actually punch with Boots Ennis, you can have success. It's a risk because Boots has good hand speed, good power, very good punching power. So it is a risk. But his defense is just shocking. And the corner, Boise Ennis, I think is his dad's name, that was just shocking corner work. It really was. You know, I know Boots was in control in this fight, but saying that, listen, as far as I'm concerned, you gave away 4 rounds, I think legitimately. Never mind that 119-107 scorecard, that's BS. But you gave at least 3 to 4 rounds away. All right, that to me shows that the guy is in it. So you really want to make sure that you're on point. To be just giving him the advice, knock him out. Knock him out. What? How is he going to do that? Well, just go and say, would you please kindly stand there so I can knock you out? It doesn't work like that, does it? You got to give your fighter sound instructions. You know, you got to, sometimes a fighters like, say, a good example would be Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather, he just knew what he was doing. He was in the zone. He had a corner there, but he was just in the zone. Some fighters like maybe Anthony Joshua was a very good example. He needs to be coached constantly. Now, if you just go and say to Joshua, go out there and knock him out, that's not going to work. Joshua needs direction. He needs, you know, constantly be told, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need blah, 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 blah. It's come back to bite him a couple of times, like in the Dubois fight where Ben Davison was saying, you know, lead him with the uppercut, don't do that. But you get what I mean. Now, Boots Ennis could be one of them where he needs that instruction. To go and just say, knock him out, and to not address the mistake. See, it's as much about telling the fighter what he needs to do in terms of trying to get rid of the guy as it is to actually say, well, hang on a minute, you know what you're doing in here? You're making mistakes. You're getting hit with the left hook too much. Hold your hand up. You know, block the left hook. You're not blocking it. He was hit with loads of left hooks. Keep the flipping right glove up. He wasn't doing that. So it's very poor instructions from the corner. Really, really poor. Now the question remains for Boots now. What happens from here? Does he stay at 147? Eddie Hearn has been talking about him, Virgil Ortiz. That would have to be at 154 because Virgil Ortiz physically, it'd be unsafe. It'd be unspeakable for him to try and attempt to do 147 given the problems he's had in the past trying to get down to that weight. It would have to be at 154. Now, Boots Ennis in his last couple of performances, he hasn't looked amazing, to say the least. I mean, he still looked good, but without looking amazing. And a lot of people are speculating it could be the weight, making 147. I don't rule that out. He's definitely big for the weight, very big for the weight. You look 2 weight divisions bigger in there. He is 27 years old, so he is growing, and you would imagine he's probably grown out of the weight. But I will say, being IBF champion is probably the hardest when it comes to making weight. Probably the hardest of all the belts to hold when it comes to making weight because of that next day weigh-in, the next day rehydration limit of, I think, 12 pounds there, thereabouts. So maybe we're not. Boots Ennis could be struggling at the weight, and then you chuck a rehydration clause in on top of that. Let's say he fought Norman Jr. for the WBO title next, right? Unification. That's waived. I think we'd see a much better Boots Ennis. I think we would, because that rehydration clause will be waived. I think we'd see a better Boots Ennis. I don't think it's just the fact that he's struggling necessarily to make the weight. I think it also has something to do with the fact that there's a rehydration clause there. So it's a combination of things. If you took that away, he might be looking a little bit better in there. He might very well be looking a wee bit better in there. So that is Boots Ennis. Oscar De La Hoya has reiterated his call for Virgil Ortiz versus Boots Ennis, Matchroom versus Golden Boy 5v5 next. So that's what they want to do. Now, I would still make Boots Ennis favourite over Virgil Ortiz. I would. At least Boots Ennis wasn't dropped in his fight. Now, Virgil Ortiz, a lot of people didn't even feel like he won his last fight. He was dropped twice. I think it was at least twice anyway he was dropped. And obviously Ryan Garcia chimes in. Boots will get knocked out by me. The ref still sucks. And Eddie got to stop calling his fighters legends premature. Did he call Boots Ennis a legend? I mean, look, I think Boots Ennis is a tremendous talent, but if Eddie Hearn is already calling him a legend, I mean, mate. You know, Johnny Fisher's a world-class prospect, but he can't fight Moses Atauma. The run that Jack Catterall has been on, past his prime, retired fighter, and a fighter who's planning on potentially retiring. Yeah, that's not really, that's literally, you know, get him at the end. You know, get him at the end. So I wouldn't, yeah. Look, we'll wait and see. But Ryan Garcia calling out Boots Ennis. Listen, Ryan Garcia can't fight until April. I'm talking about this, Dandy. He can't fight till April. He'll probably be fighting at 147 next. Will Boots Ennis even be around at 147 come what April? I doubt it very much. I doubt it. Now, the thing is, right, 147 pounds is, and I said this in my post-fight review, it's weird because that weight division seems to be a conveyor belt of good fighters after good fighters each generation. You know, you go back to Thomas Hearns, Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran. You go into the 90s, you had the likes of, I know Sweet Pea was at 135. I think he did end up going to 147, correct me if I'm wrong. I know Sweet Pea was at 135, but you had the, I know 140, it was Chavez Jr. and Taylor. I think that was at 140. God, I'm trying to think of some of the welterweights. I know De La Hoya came around, that was more kind of the back end of the 90s. Tito Trinidad. You go into the 2000s, you've got Floyd Mayweather at 147, Manny Pacquiao obviously went up to 147, Cotto 147. You go and you have Terence Crawford, Errol Spence, Keith Thurman, Danny Garcia when he was in his prime, Kell Brook, Amir Khan, so on and so forth. Now it's no disrespect, but it's looking a bit thin on the ground. You know, I don't put Mario Barros and Brian Norman Jr. in the same league as those guys with the greatest of respect. Having said that, when you look at 140, Devin Haney, he's going to move up pretty damn soon, I would imagine, as will Ryan Garcia. Teofimo Lopez, I think, will struggle a little bit at 140. I don't think the powers come up with him to 147, I should say. I don't think the powers come up to 140. If he goes to 147, could struggle a little bit there. But you get what I mean. A lot of these guys are eventually going to find their way to 147. I think that will add a lot of life into the division, to be honest with you. I think it really, really will. I've also seen Eddie Hearn mention that he had something about signing, that he is in the process or already has signed a former undisputed champion. He didn't mention what weight. Doubt he signed Alexander Usyk because he's former undisputed champion. Doubt very much he signed Terence Crawford. I'd say Terence Crawford's got one foot out the door. Beterbiev's not a former undisputed champion, he's a current one. The only former undisputed champion I can think of is Josh Taylor. I mean, that's a strange one, if it is. It has me thinking, who is the undisputed fighter that Eddie Hearn has signed? If it is Josh Taylor, yeah, like, I don't know, maybe at 147 he'll look a little bit better, but I doubt it. Eddie Hearn's revealed that he believes Anthony Cacace will vacate his IBF title rather than defend against Eduardo Sugar Nunez. As a result, he is eyeing Nunez versus Mansour Rakishi for the vacant title, and would then want to make Nunez versus Ford. Don't get your chickens before they hatch, that's what I always say. I will also point out that I actually seen Keyshawn Davis I forgot to review his performance actually. Keyshawn Davis knocked out Gustavo Lemos in 2 rounds. Lemos came in 6.5 pounds overweight. Absolutely ridiculous to be missing weight by that amount. Now Gustavo Lemos, I would put him up there as a decent fighter. So for Keyshawn Davis to be going in there, because he beat the likes, I know Lee Selby was, I never really rated Lee Selby. I know he beat Lee Selby, and then who else did he fight? Did he fight, oh Lord, I can't remember the fight he fought, but it was a very contentious decision. And now he's going in there and he's getting blown out by Keyshawn Davis. It's a very good performance by Keyshawn Davis. Eddie Hearn has declared that Shakur Stevenson has agreed a deal with His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh to defend his WBC super lightweight world title against William Zepeda next, potentially on February 22nd. And it depends on if Zepeda will agree and agree to the deal and take the fight. Matchroom versus Golden Boy. There you go. There's a Matchroom versus Golden Boy fight. This is one of the few fights where I would absolutely happily watch Shakur Stevenson fight in. I love watching William Zepeda. His energy, his punch output is phenomenal. He will bring a good fight out of Shakur. He has to. I would favour Shakur in that fight. I think Shakur would just outbox him like it's easy. But I do think he will outbox William Zepeda. But that is one of the few fights that I would happily watch Shakur Stevenson fight in. No questions asked. No questions asked. I think it'd be a great fight. Jaime Munguia will be back to the ring against the guy called Bruno Suarez on December the 14th. That will be with Top Rank. So I have no idea what Oscar De La Hoya was talking about when he made a call out to Eddie Hearn saying we can do Jaime Munguia versus Diego Pacheco, because he's fighting with Top Rank. Oscar, do you even know who fights with your stable? Because that really, yeah. Martin Bakole would be willing and ready to face Daniel Dubois for his IBF world title on February 22nd in Riyadh season. That is according to Benn. Let's talk briefly about Daniel Dubois. So, Eddie Hearn, so obviously Daniel Dubois, without an announcement being made, is pretty much a slam dunk that he's going to be featuring, if not headlining, the February 22nd show in Saudi Arabia as part of Riyadh season. The question is now, who's going to be the opponent? All right, and what happened to Anthony Joshua? So when he beat Anthony Joshua, Daniel Dubois, it seemed, again, almost a slam dunk that we would see Joshua versus Dubois too. Look, I think it would go similar to the first fight, if not more conclusive, but at the end of the day, look, I would still watch it. Then it emerged that no, it won't be happening, and that Anthony Joshua has some niggles. Eddie Hearn went on to further elaborate and basically say that, he's got some niggles, he might not be able to train and start camp for another 3 to 4 weeks. But that is early to mid-ish December. So, what's the date today? It's the 10th of November. So, and that was earlier in the week. So let's say it's 3 weeks, roughly. That's early December. You're essentially talking maybe the first, second week in December. Man, that still gives you over 8 weeks to prepare. I just don't understand how that's not long enough. And that's what I'm saying. I wonder, because again, Eddie Hearn is saying a niggle. Now, I would interpret a niggle as in, oh, your knee is a little bit jacked. All right, so you can't do any road work, but you can swim. Oh, your right hand is a little bit messed up, it's bruised. Okay, let's just focus on the left. Let's just work on, left hand sparring or something. Just no throwing at the right hand. There's ways around it. That's what I would associate a niggle with. But then he speaks and says, with the injuries, he's not in a wheelchair. And I would think that, mid-December till the end of February is more than enough time to be able to get a camp up. That has me speculating that they are literally just waiting to see what happens with Fury Usyk. That's pretty much it. They're just waiting to see whatever happens with Fury Usyk. If Fury win or lose, really, I think that's what it's going to be. It's just a case of if Fury wins, they're going to try and jump the queue, which I think would be inexcusable as far as I'm concerned, especially to come in off the back of that Daniel Dubois defeat and just jump the queue and get the media title crack at Fury would be just wrong as far as I'm concerned. And if he loses, well then, as my mother would say, blacken your arse and go mad. That's literally what I think will happen. So that is what I think is going to happen with Anthony Joshua. I think they're waiting to see what happens with Fury Usyk. If Fury loses and then he decides to walk away, then they'll probably look to do the Dubois rematch. That's what I think. In terms of opponents for Dubois, I would rule Martin Bakole out. I can't see them taking that fight. Frank Warren's going to want to keep this in-house. He's going to probably look at the likes of Joseph Parker, the likes of Zile Zhang, or maybe even just, you see, here's the thing, right? I was saying maybe the likes of an Otto or someone like that. The only problem with that is, if this is going to headline a Riyadh show, well, it might not headline, probably will, but you're going to want the headline act to be a really, really good fight, you would imagine, or a fight that on paper will entice fans. Otto Wallin is not going to entice anybody. You know, Otto Wallin, he couldn't, I'm not even going to go there, but Otto Wallin is not going to entice anybody, you know. So I don't think that that's really, I'm sure Turkey is going to want at least a decent enough opponent, you know. I think that's what he's going to want. So what else do we have here? I did see Oscar De La Hoya say that, you know, let's do a 6v6 Eddie Hearn, sorry, Golden Boy versus Matchroom, with De La Hoya versus Eddie Hearn as the main event. Apparently Eddie Hearn has agreed to that. Yeah, look, Eddie Hearn is a lot more switched on. I mean, that doesn't take much doing, but he is, than Oscar De La Hoya. But Eddie Hearn wouldn't stand a prayer of lasting a round or two with De La Hoya. Even now, De La Hoya was a great fighter. He really was. I mean, I know he's an absolute head case now, but he was a phenomenal fighter in his prime. Absolutely phenomenal fighter. Conor Benn has now revealed that he signed a managerial deal with Keith Connolly, and this comes in the wake of Conor Benn apparently being cleared by the National Anti-Doping Panel. A statement from the British Boxing Board of Control that they are aware of Conor Benn issued a public statement in relation to the processing between the UKAD and the British Boxing Board. They refer to the statement, "We are considering our position." That's what they say. They're considering their position. I would take that as a, we are going to let this one go. And at the end of the day, look, I'm not Conor Benn's biggest fan, as I've said several times. I think the way he handled this situation was absolutely appalling. I think that he came across as an entitled, spoiled little brat. That's really how it came across, you know, blame everyone instead of just trying to look for a resolution. You look at how, look, Ryan Garcia is something else, but look at the way he handled this. It's done, and no one gives a you-know-what. He's taken a year suspension. It's done. No one gives a you-know-what. Conor Benn, he dug his heels. It's dragged on for 2 years. That's a 101 in how not to handle a situation, and egged on, no pun intended, the whole time by Eddie Hearn. It did not look right. It did not look right at all. And listen, I think Eddie Hearn will have taken some lessons from it. I definitely think that if something like that happened in the future with any of his respected fighters, Eddie Hearn will not behave and start going on the way he did. Conor Benn, Conor Benn is just not bright. You know, Conor Benn, it goes in one ear out the other with that kid. It really does. So God knows what he'll do next. But I think they should just wave the white flag, draw a line in the sand. Enough is enough. Conor Benn, I think it's just going to be Eubank next. That's what they're going to do. For whatever reason, Eddie Hearn is determined to do that fight. Apparently Turkey is as well, again, for whatever reason. I'll watch it, but I think that, you know, Eubank should be certainly looking for a title fight, or potentially looking to call out some of his contemporaries like Hamza Shiraz. And I think Conor Benn needs to get a move on in his own respective weight division. He hasn't made welterweight now for nearly 3 years. And how would he react to doing that as well? Because you got to figure, you know, I mean, I know Conor Benn was never the biggest welterweight. I always felt that he was more a 140 pounder. But he is a grown man. I think he's in his mid to late 20s now. So you haven't made that weight for a couple of years. How is the body going to react now? Could he have actually outgrown the weight and now be up at 154? If that is the case, I mean, he is really going to struggle at that weight division. Really going to struggle. He will get obliterated at that weight division. He really will. Speaking of fighters who've been obliterated, Deontay Wilder, you know, his trainer, in all of his wisdom, Malik Scott, yeah, that guy. The guy who took a dive, in my opinion, in that fight he had in 2014 with Deontay Wilder in Puerto Rico, I believe it was. The guy who's now training him. Deontay Wilder has won one fight with Malik Scott in the corner, and that was against Robert Helenius, where he didn't have to do anything. Lost 4 of his last 5 fights. 3 of them by knockout. 2 of them particularly bad knockouts. Malik Scott is saying that Wilder is in the second half of his career. Is he? Jesus. Yeah, I missed the second half. I call it the twilight, the end, actually, more so. It's probably more fit with the end. But he is now saying that Deontay Wilder will be back in 2025, and as the names of Anthony Joshua, Andy Ruiz and Jarrell Miller listed as potential opponents. Now, the Joshua fight, I don't necessarily mind that. They're both at a similar stage in their careers. It might bring something out of Deontay Wilder. Andy Ruiz, likewise, you might have some luck there because Ruiz looked shocking last time out and that broken hand looked horrendous. Miller, on the other hand, I think that could end ugly for Deontay Wilder. I think it really could. Prime Wilder, probably be alright, but yeah, I think that could end pretty bad for Deontay Wilder. Or certainly he'd get outworked very badly in that fight. Listen, Wilder, once that killer instinct goes, it ain't coming back. Certainly at this point in his career, because as I said in the video I did, he was fighting to feed his family. He was fighting to prove something. He was fighting for his daughter. And he's done all that. He's got nothing left to prove. So where's that? How is he going to find that killer instinct now? And as I said, you know, he's had a bit of the Graham Hancock, so that's mellowed him out, clearly. And I just don't see him finding that fire again. And Malik Scott had a go at people like myself, or not me directly, but you know, people like myself who would say Wilder should retire. And him saying, oh, why should he? No. Malik Scott is looking after his best interest, not Wilder's best interest. Malik Scott as a fighter never made any real good money in his career. So now he's making good money being the trainer of Deontay Wilder, because Deontay Wilder is still making very big purses, and he wants those purses to continue, because he's probably made more money over the last, 4 fights that he's had. It's been 5 fights with Deontay Wilder, 4 I think. He's only made more money out of those last 4 fights being in the corner for Deontay Wilder than he did in his whole boxing career combined. Maybe even made more money in 1 fight than he did in his whole boxing career combined. And he wants that to keep rolling in. That's all it is with Malik Scott. It's nothing to do with the fact that he sees something in Deontay Wilder. It's nothing to do with any of that. It's like what's always been the case with Deontay Wilder. It's the managers, the trainers. They're using him to make a quick buck. And that's all it's been. And Deontay Wilder doesn't realise that. And if he's not realised that now, he never will. So that's what I got to say on that one. Would I watch Deontay Wilder against Anthony Joshua? Yeah, I think that's probably the only fight that I'd be interested in seeing him in. Maybe the Andy Ruiz fight as well, or potentially a Dana White fight. But I just don't see Wilder with anything left to offer. And I think the Saudis don't see him with anything left to offer. And I think if he goes in there and he does perform terribly again, which I expect him to, that's it. That's the end of it. The Saudis aren't going to want to work with him again. He's not going to get any. He's not going to get networks like PBC or anything like that calling him up saying, fight for us, we want to pay you. Not going to happen. So I think Scott is just trying to make one last big payday so he can sail off into the sunset as much, you know. That's what I see there, you know. So I'll leave it there. I think that's pretty much it. I think I got pretty much everything in this video. I was going to talk a little bit about Tyson Paul. We'll probably leave that. I don't even want to do a video on that because it's just I'm not even going to do a prediction, but I might do a video just knocking the fight, just saying how I don't like it. Might do something like that. I'm not going to do it here, but I'll leave it there. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope you all have a great week, people. Smash the like button if you haven't. Hit subscribe, of course, as always, if you haven't already. We're not too far off 21,800. We're only about 12, 13 subs off. So please smash that like button, hit subscribe. I'd love to get to 21k by Christmas. 21k by Christmas would be lovely, because I finished last year with 15, so that'd be 6k in a year. I think that's pretty good going. I think that's pretty damn good going if I can do that. So if you could, be appreciated. Hit the like button, subscribe, all that good stuff. Till next time, people. Peace.